Okay. So okay. I'm just going to read this verbatim. Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in discussion. The town reserved the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who does not use a full name or acts inappropriately. Confirming member access. As a preliminary matter, this is Tucker Holland, Housing Director. Permit me to confirm that all members of the Affordable Housing Trust and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brooke Mohr.
Yes.
Rima Sherry.
Here.
Penny Dye.
Here.
Dave Iverson.
Here.
Kristie Ferrantella.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ken Bogran.
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. And I don't know that anyone is anticipated as a speaker. And we have Brian. Brian, do you want to confirm you are in attendance? Brian, do you want to confirm you're in attendance?
I am in attendance. Brian Sullivan, aye.
So if Brian, if you have the script that I sent from Erica, we are just starting the introduction to remote meeting about halfway down the first page, if you want to take over.
Halfway down, introduction. Good morning or good afternoon. This open meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Affordable Housing Trust is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured in the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided trust members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We are turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford the public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Okay. I'm just pulling up the agenda. Give me 1 second.
So Brian, with the agenda, I just wanted to note that the CAP application we will be taking up at the meeting on the 20th, not today.
Thank you.
So the first item is approval of the agenda.
Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
I roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Mohr,
Aye.
Kristie Ferrantella,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
and Penny Dye.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan, aye. The second item on the agenda, we have an approval of minutes from June 1st, 2021. Is there any comments, conversation, edit, or comments?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Second from Penny, by roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Mohr,
Aye.
Kristie Ferrantella,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
and Penny Dye.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Item number 4, we have a closing cost assistance program application for Hassel Lewis for 45B Beachgrass Road.
And that's the one
That's
that's
being postponed.
moved.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
So we'll keep that item on for further agenda. Item number 5, certification, a safe harbor update. I'll turn this to Tucker, but first say thank you for all the hard work and getting that in and around, and congratulations. So let's share with everybody what has happened.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, really, congratulations to everyone on this board and on this call, and it goes so much further. I had the opportunity at the select board meeting the other night to try to list really as folks who've played a really important role in this, and I won't attempt to redo it today, but it is on a public record. And as the board is well aware, we really have been working over the last 2 years to thoughtfully plan to both expend taxpayer dollars in the manner that was originally intended, and to do so such that we would enter a new period of safe harbor or certification with respect to Chapter 40B. And we're very pleased, working very closely with DHCD and all of the partner housing organizations here, and of course the select board and many others, the finance department. Definitely worth noting here that we were able to have our housing production plan certified again on June 11th, basically 2 days before the expiration of our prior plan. I mean, that was not a small undertaking, and everyone on this board just played an absolutely critical role. I also want to say that this couldn't have happened without Ken and Eleanor's significant contributions. I mean, this is the definition of a big team effort. So our period of new certification started on June 11th. It runs for 1 year, and as the board is well aware, we are working on the Wildflower Acceleration Program with the Richmond Development Group to accelerate the production and provide greater affordability within that of a portion of their planned project that will add a second year of safe harbor when that is ready. And that probably will occur in the next 30 to 60 days. As long as it technically happens before December 31st, that will extend our certification period for an additional year. So that would take us to June of 2023. That's it in a nutshell. I guess I will also mention that officially our count on our subsidized housing inventory list is 273 units. So we are at 5.5% toward the 10% requirement, which is pretty noteworthy given we were less than 2%, just 2.5, 3 years ago. So it isn't necessarily showing entirely yet, but our efforts are are beginning to pay off. And we're looking forward to having several of these projects come online over the course of the next 12 months. And, the most important goal of all, of having year-round residents residing in them on a full-time basis. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tucker. Does anyone have any questions, comments for Tucker on follow-up?
I do. Not a question. I just would like to commend Tucker for explaining something that's all along the way that's just terribly, terribly complex. And I think the work that was done by the outreach committee also right before town meeting was extremely helpful on this, just generally. So thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Seeing no other, thank you, Tucker. We can move on to the next item, the housing production plan review and recommendation. So Tucker, do you want to start, or do you want to just pass right to Judy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just make a brief introduction. As everyone knows, this has been a significant effort over the course of the last roughly 8 months. We're extremely pleased to be working with Judy Barrett and Jen Goldson and their teams on this update to our housing production plan. The current plan expires in October, which we're well aware of, and therefore we wanted to have a new plan to guide us for the next 5 years in place and approved by DHCD in advance of that date. There's been a tremendous amount of outreach and community involvement through both focus groups and surveys and public meetings. So we've gotten a lot of terrific input. We think it's generally well reflected in the plan. And we have Judy Barrett here today to, guide the discussion and take any further comment from board members and the public as we craft this to be ready to go before the planning board on July 12th and on the select board on July 21st. And so, but it's a requirement that both of those boards give their approval before we send it up to DHCD for hopefully ultimately theirs. And with that, I'll hand it over to Judy. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker. Judy, floor is yours.
So I don't have a big presentation today. I actually came kind of thinking that we would, have a discussion, and I would find out if you folks have any other comments that we have not already heard. I think we've been through a couple of drafts on this, which was fine. I think at this point, given that the schedule, I think, calls for getting this to the planning board next week and the select board in a week and a half or so, that we'd like to know if there are any kind of burning comments that somehow still haven't been addressed that you want us to address. And I think also kind of on a going forward basis, I would just ask the trust if a lot of comments do come in over the next few weeks, which is fine. That's what, board meetings are about. If there are conflicts in policy or something in those comments, we're going to need you guys to sort of vet those and tell us how you want us to address them. Because what we can't do is sort of, as I'm sure you can understand, get a long list of comments which have policy conflicts embedded in them. So we need you guys to be able to sort of own how you want those to be addressed. But beyond that, I think we've kind of gone with this as far as we can. But I'm always happy to hear additional thoughts or comments or suggestions.
Thanks, Judy.
No
I'd
problem.
love to pose to Dave or Kristie, as it'll be the two of your boards that'll be reviewing. Is there anything that can be helpful from the rest of our board or the packet or Judy as those get reviewed? Or go ahead, Dave.
No, I mean, I think, many suggestions on zoning changes. So I'm sure we'll be looking at that more carefully. The reference to lessen parking numbers is troubling to me. I just think that especially in these kind of developments is really kind of a rough road that I mean, we're already in a position where we don't have enough parking just following the zoning bylaws for parking spaces already. So I understand why Judy has it in there, but less parking spaces, more space to build beds. But, with the state of affairs on island with transportation, even though our transportation system is good, but I just think that that's a scary place, to be taking away parking spaces. So, but I'm sure we will be talking a lot about it at planning board, about zoning changes and how we can help support the effort.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Kristie?
I was gonna add, I don't think there's anything more that we could add or do before going for a select board. I think we're gonna take a lot from the planning board discussion and then go from there.
Great. Thank you. Any other board members, Brooke?
It's funny, Dave, you bring up the parking thing. I was having a conversation with a community member yesterday who said, I love the idea of fewer parking spaces. So there you have it. The dilemma of policy on affordable housing, right?
Well, yeah, it's where they're going to park when they don't have the parking spaces. That's
Right.
the dilemma.
Yep.
Rima?
I just want to ask Tucker if he got that typo to Judy that I sent over the weekend.
That is listed. So what we're doing is
We're
assembling,
adding,
additional comments. Like the only comment that I've gotten in addition to yours, Rima, was one simply about, I think we've got to, and I've already mentioned this to Judy, that we talk about modular homes in there, and it sort of comes across as like that's a novel idea here when we have
Yeah.
like over 1,000 modular homes. So I think we
Right.
may want to just massage that a little bit to maybe speak to like working with modular home companies to develop like a quote unquote Nantucket tiny home that meets code and design requirements locally, or just push it a little bit in that direction. But those are the only two changes that we've heard from anyone about at this point.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Rima. Penny, did you?
Yeah, I'm sorry to backtrack, but the parking situation with the housing authority, we had very, very strict requirements when we allowed Habitat to build on Benjamin Drive about the parking in particular. So I just think it's an ongoing issue, but you can have restrictions, but they do need to be enforced. That's it.
Penny, were those, just out of curiosity, were those requirements for more spaces or less spaces? And a qualification of who got to use the spaces?
It was controlling the maximum number that we wanted to allow and having them well demarcated to keep other people from using them. So control.
Okay, cool.
And as the grantor, the housing of that property, the housing authority, of course, is going to have to be the enforcer.
Right.
Judy's heard it all before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other kind of details for the conversation for Judy for the document today? Are there any, we have a number of members from the public here, or a handful. Would anyone from the public like to make a comment or have an opportunity to share anything? I'm seeing some head shakes no. Okay, Judy, thank you.
So I think the plan is, I'm sorry, Brooke, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something? I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was going to say, do we need to make a formal recommendation to send the report to planning and select board?
Yes, with the edits as we noted.
Great. So, with Brooke, that sounds like the beginning of a motion. Do you want to carry through with that?
Yeah, I move that we approve the draft housing production plan to move it forward with the edits as noted to the planning board and select board for approval.
I'll
Is-
second.
And that's a second by Rima. Vote by roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Mohr,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Kristie Ferrantella, and Brian Sullivan's an aye.
With gratitude to Judy and
With
Jen and their teams.
So thank you. So the plan right now is, I'm going to leave this in Microsoft Word for now because I don't know what else might be coming at us. But we did promise to put this into a nice desktop publishing format for you, and we will do that. Tucker and I spoke just before this meeting. I think the best way to do that is let's get through the select board meeting as well, because I don't know if we're going to be asked to make other changes at that level. If we, wherever we are at that point, then we'll put it into a nice package for you. And we'll make sure, of course, that you have the original Word document anyway, in case you need it for some other reason. But between the time that the selectmen approve it, hopefully that they do, and when you see it again, which will probably be a 5-day turnaround or something, we'll convert it to desktop publishing and make a nice package. So I bring this up because with the pandemic, I've not been there as much as I like to be, and that I have been in the past. And I haven't had an opportunity to take pictures. So pictures always make a plan so much better. And I think I'm just throwing out to all of you, because I know Tucker's working on it. I think Ann may be giving some pictures as well. But if any of you have photographs, and I don't just mean housing photographs help. It doesn't have to just be housing, but anything that sort of captures what Nantucket is and what people love about the island, and pictures of different types of housing, including affordable housing. If you have anything like that, if you could put them in that client Dropbox we have with you, where the draft documents were put, so that we can have the benefit of the local eyes, if you will, which is literally what we get when we get your pictures. It would be just hugely helpful to production if we had some better art.
So you're looking for our off-season pictures if you want what people love about Nantucket.
I'll take pictures of anything that you want to tell me about what people love about Nantucket. And if you want to take pictures of a very busy, town center area where in the on season, that's fine too. Whatever you think will be helpful. And, I'm glad you kind of brought this up, because it is this island with many faces. And so if people have pictures of the busy Nantucket as well as the not so busy Nantucket, that's fine too, because it captures what the island is to many different people.
Yes, Rima?
I'll have a hard time finding that Dropbox. Could we send them to Tucker?
Yeah, please just email them to me and I'll make sure Judy gets them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought Dropbox would be easier in case the files are large.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I can think of.
Ann's got her hand up.
Ann, would
I'm
you?
sorry.
Yeah, just one quick comment. Tucker had asked me right before the meeting how many Covenant homes, and I didn't have a chance to actually look until just now. So we have 98 Covenant homes as of today, but we have another one scheduled for next week. And then number 100 is going to be happening really soon. It's kind of a race at this point, but hopefully by the time you do publish your final version, we'll have that number 100 closed and created. And
Do you want me to say 100, or do you want me to say 99 with 100th pending?
I mean, today we only have 98. If it's today, it just depends when. Tomorrow's
We're talking
supposed to
about
be
a couple of weeks out. We're talking about a couple of weeks out, Ann.
Like
Brian?
99, 100 pending.
Is
Could we
Jeff,
set- could we set-
is Jeff
we-
Bezos racing for 100 or?
Yes, Penny?
It's just an easy way to handle this is just to say nearly 100.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I don't get the Bezos reference, but
The space race? Come on.
oh, sorry. Okay.
Ann said there's a race for 100. I mean, Jeff's got to be involved with that.
We could use a
Okay.
billionaire racing for 200 Covenant homes.
Bringing it back. Let's see. So it feels like we're all set. Judy, do you have
Okay.
any other comments for us? Are you good?
No, I'm fine. I just want to make sure, do you need me to stay or not? Because I got a 2 o'clock, but I can hang on with you guys for a while.
No, the only benefit might be you're up on all the town meeting things that happened, right? As far as it was pretty substantial, and I think that that's a valuable conversation for the report itself and for
Yep.
DHCD. So if you want to listen in on any of that, but
Yeah, there's some of that's incorporated in there already.
right.
Yep.
All right.
But don't feel like you need to. That wasn't, I didn't mean to pressure you into that. If you've got to run, feel free.
That's fine. No, if you don't need me, I'm gonna go because it's an insane day here, but whatever. Nice to
We'll
see
see
all of you. Yep,
We'll see you soon.
yep. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Judy.
Yep, thank you.
The annual town meeting review, housing related articles, just a quick review for the public record, I think was the original intent here. Tucker, did you want to just run through a bulleted list, or we had thought about doing this closer to the meeting itself and then we had to reschedule a meeting?
Yeah, I think this was maybe a holdover from the meeting that we could not conduct on June 15th. So unless there's a board member who would like to talk about this specifically, I think some of the same subject matter may come up when we're talking about priorities for the next 12 months.
Does anybody want to address any of the items from town meeting specifically at this point, or? Brooke?
I just like to say that I think that the most encouraging takeaway that I took from town meeting is that there is consistent voter support both at town meeting and at the ballot box for our continued safe harbor management and production of Chapter 40B units. And while we all know that the need is greater than that, the fact that we have sort of consistent, reliable support for that effort is a huge change from when I joined this board. So I just wanted to make note of that.
Thank you, Brooke. I would agree. To have the votes follow all the way through the ballot was pretty impressive and exciting. So, okay, not to take too much time on that, it seems that there's no other comments. I'll just move right on to an update of 31 Fairgrounds. And that's coming back to you. Is that Ann going to lead that, or Tucker want to lob it to Ann?
Ann is here to give us an update.
Great, that's nice lob. Ann, the floor is yours.
All right. Hello. Thank you. It's Ann Kuszpa from Housing Nantucket. Yeah, I mean, things are really moving along here. If anyone's driven by the site itself lately, you probably noticed that the garage structure has been relocated and recycled. As a matter of fact, went to another Coffin household member. So it will stay in the house, in the family. And then the ranch that was on the property was recently moved over to a lot that was approved as a covenant lot. So once it gets slid onto the foundation, then the idea is that it would provide year-round housing for a family at that new spot at 33 South Shore Road.
Is that 99 or 100?
Well, we don't know. I mean, it's just like this, you know how it is. You don't know when they're going to close, and I don't know. It's definitely not number 99. 99 is not that one, but it could be 100.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, and then tonight we're going to HDC for the first time officially for the new build. They'll be reviewing a schematic of the site as well as a couple of the building dimensions. And, I'm not the architect there. We'll have Emeritus Designs he'll be presenting, and then I'll be there in support of the application. And that's in person at 4 Fairgrounds in the community room tonight at 5.
Great. Does anybody have any questions specific for Ann on the project? Rima?
And there's a little pile of bricks towards the front of the property, and I was wondering if I could take a couple for a family member. I want to make her a doorstop.
I will look into that. I'll get back to you, Rima.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Seeing no more there. Anne, thank you for the update and the persistence on the progress and the project. Very exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. And just follow us on social media if you want like the latest breaking news on that. And also the newsletter. We try to do a recap every month or two.
Awesome.
Thank
Great.
you.
Now we'll move to item 9, sort of our priorities between now and next annual town meeting. We just finished one. Let's get ready for the next. So Tucker, how would you like to, do you want just an open floor conversation, following ideas? Do you want to kind of guide this through a 12-item list?
15 items, actually.
15-item list?
So, I mean, I could just, yeah, briefly maybe iterate them for the public and sort of for prosperity here. But the idea is, even though we just concluded the 2021 town meeting, the 2022 town meeting is going to sneak up on us faster than I think we really realize, and maybe in part because there's so much that we have going on and want to accomplish during this time frame. So it's looking like May 5th, May 2nd at 5 o'clock is going to be the annual town meeting kickoff next spring. And so in order that we accomplish what we want to accomplish between now and then and not get distracted, and of course there are always things that come up along the way, we just thought it would be useful to have a conversation about what the board does see as priorities for this next year, and make sure that everything that we want on the radar is there, and so forth. So I mean, just kind of running through them.
Tucker, I'm just going to cut you off for half a second. If everybody's following along on the packet, it's page 93.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, we've really identified, 15 priorities here. Nothing magical about the number, nor is there anything magical about the order. Although I will say item number 1 is quite important, which is to hire a new staff person now that Eleanor is off to a new pursuit. So that's something that Ken and I are actively engaged in. We're going to be finalizing the job description this week, and Amanda is going to start advertising for that shortly. I think the trust has identified that having a community land trust on Nantucket is an important next step here, particularly maybe in the ownership arena for year-rounders. Item 3, in conjunction really with the land trust, is to develop a shared equity or down payment assistance program for year-rounders. Again, a home ownership program. We want to, of course, item 4, be maintaining safe harbor along our way to the 10%. And we talked a little bit about how we're doing on that front earlier. Number 5, a zoning review. Dave Iverson touched on this earlier. In the plan, of course, it identifies opportunities for revising zoning. And so we probably want to take a deeper dive there and think about articles that we might want to work in conjunction with the planning board to support at next year's town meeting. And that kind of feeds into number 6, which is warrant articles that we want to have included at next year's ATM. Item 7, as we're just talking about 31 Fairgrounds, we're excited to have that open and occupied by next summer. And the team is working toward that goal. Item 8, the wildflower acceleration, same time frame. Want to have that open and occupied by next summer. And again, they are moving along in accordance with that. Item 9, assist in the development of 6 fairgrounds where we can. We talked about how with the delay of that project due to the lawsuit and the ensuing significant increase in construction costs, that we may need to play a role ultimately financially to allow that to go forward. Even with the tax credit award, there will be a gap, it looks like. 135, 137 Orange Street is something we want to issue an award, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more in a moment about the timing of that. Vesper Lane, the UMass property, we want to be working on the plan for that and issuing an RFP at the appropriate juncture. That obviously is part of our ongoing safe harbor plan. In conjunction, we really need to acquire an additional property to pair with the UMass property to get a full year of safe harbor. So the UMass property itself could support as many as 19 units. I'm not sure that we would necessarily do all of that. We probably would do fewer units than that, being mindful of parking and other considerations. And in any event, we need 24, as you all know, for a year of safe harbor. So we are going to need some additional land to pair with Vesper Lane. And then item 13, we've reached out to them before, but we with a new director and maybe coming out of town meeting and some of the discussion there, and certainly the experience that many businesses and year-rounders are having this summer with housing, we're hoping to really find areas to collaborate with the Nantucket Land Bank, much like the housing entities in the Vineyard have been able to do 14 projects to date with the Martha's Vineyard Land Bank. And we are actually going to be going over with some of the land bank folks in a few weeks to meet with, let's say, our counterparts on the Vineyard, and hopefully all benefit from those conversations. Also want to explore collaborations with the Nantucket Preservation Trust. I think it's really, really interesting. This is a relatively small nonprofit on Nantucket. They have an operating budget in the $500,000 range, and they are thinking about how they can play a role in housing. And I just think that is really tremendous foresight on their part, and welcome the opportunity to work together on whether we're involving historic tax credits or other approaches to maybe accomplishing a couple of goals collaboratively. And then finally, item 15 is to identify and advance the funding opportunities to support kind of everything that we've talked about above. So that's what we identified here. The members may have additional thoughts and clarifications they want to add here, and so I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tucker. I had one question on the list. Do you, or an item you brought up, did the Vineyard, of the 14 projects that the Vineyard and their land bank worked on, do you have any idea what the unit count was?
We have details about each of those projects. I don't know the number right off the top of my head, but
okay,
we'll get that.
Cool, thank you. Penny?
Yeah, just a quick question. I think it's fairly likely we're going to have a fall town meeting. And is there a reason any of these things can't come up? I forget. At fall town meeting, I'm forgetting what the protocol is.
Some of them could. I mean, are you talking about introducing a warrant article or?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. I mean, some of them definitely could. I haven't heard about like deadlines for that. Ken, I don't know if you know more about this.
I have not heard it being high on the agenda right now. I know there was a discussion about it because of certain things, but I haven't heard, there's not been anything sort of that's hot on the burner right now that I'm aware of.
all I want to, I just bring it up, just raise it because we need to pay attention if there's something that we want to advocate for that shouldn't wait until the next regular town meeting.
And just by way of personal disclosure, I am the chairman of the board of the Nantucket Preservation Trust.
Thank you, Ken.
My comments still stand.
Brooke?
So 125 signatures and we have a town meeting whenever 125 people decide we need one. So just that said, I learned that process last year. I wanted to talk a little bit about the zoning review item. And it's been in back of my mind for a while now that there is a narrative in the community that zoning could solve the affordable housing crisis if only we did X or Y in zoning. That I reached out to Judith Wagner just on my own a few months ago and asked whether she's chair of the planning board, whether she was interested in having a conversation about the intersection of affordable housing and the zoning bylaw. And at the time, like all of us, she was very busy, but was open to that. And I would love to consider trying to put together a work group of some kind that includes NPNEDC / planning board and other stakeholders in reviewing the zoning bylaw, obviously the planning department as well, and finding and analyzing opportunities for amendments to the zoning bylaw that could additionally support affordable housing efforts on island. And I think that's something we should pursue actively as soon as possible.
Sorry, I muted myself. Penny, were you raising your hand or stepping away? You went.
No, I was raising my hand, but another call just came in. Brooke, could you just for the education of everybody, explain what types of things, like, are you thinking about inclusionary zoning? I'm just curious.
Well, that's the one that people bring up to me more often than not. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little cynical about the role of zoning in solving affordable housing on Nantucket, right? And there's, we have a very, very liberal zoning bylaw when it comes to things, but, our secondary dwelling bylaw does not require that those be occupied year round. And so in many communities, an ADU bylaw or a secondary tertiary dwelling bylaw would contribute to year-round housing stock. And it probably has to some extent here, but on the other hand, it's also contributed a lot of units that have done nothing to supply year-round housing. And so, there's a lot of questions floating around in the community and conversation about the role of zoning in solving affordable housing. And I just think a thorough analysis that would be helpful for me and for this board to be able to engage in that conversation in the community with a lot better knowledge about the intersection of the two things and where opportunities and limits come. And I think that there's a lot of things that seem like a good idea that may never get passed, but I think it's worth evaluating them and getting community input on them.
I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
I don't know if, and this is a question directed to Dave, or I'm not sure actually to who, but Andy Lowell's article that was kind of sent out for continued or further review, non-binding, was basically a 1 in 10 permit for affordable housing. How does that review or conversation continue, under this umbrella if it does, since it was non-binding?
I'm not sure I have an answer for that, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that there are some serious, in my opinion, some serious unintended consequences for something like that. I mean, I think that's going to gum up. it's going to have a very negative effect on the building industry. And I'm not saying I'm exactly a fan of the building industry, but I just think that we really need to be careful on what we do, and that includes inclusionary zoning. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it and go about it, but I think that we really need to be careful, just for the simple fact that so many people derive their living from that industry that I think that when it comes to zoning and affordable housing, I think it's more about tweaking what we have than overhauling what we have to accommodate more opportunities in more districts.
I guess my question, Dave, I brought up Andy's, and then maybe I shouldn't have, but it was less about the content of his suggestion, but more of the process of the conversation or review. And how do we kind of move that along as a two-board party?
Well, we at the planning board I think we're going to do what we're doing here now, is having a town meeting review. And I think then when we get through that, I think then it's getting the two boards together, and I'll talk to Judith about it next week after the meeting. I think I can, definitely make it happen. We just need to figure out what the right format is.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Kristie, I saw you pop your hand up. Is it still? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had another comment, and then also to touch on Dave's comments. I think the word from town council was the way that Andy Lowell's article was written. It wasn't legally enforceable, but I think it's worth us continuing the conversation of what path could it take, or what changes could be made if that's something that we wanted to move forward with. In terms of the discussion, I wanted to add two things. I think number 15 touches on funding, but I think having a long discussion about long-term funding. We keep going to town meeting for short-term funding solutions, but trying to find a more sustainable long-term funding source is something that we could discuss, and that could be part of number 15 or one of its own. Another thing that I think could be in kind of this 1 year or 2 year plan is trying to do either another survey or a data report of what is the need on Nantucket. I know the data platform did a lot of work and quite frankly didn't feel like it met the standards to provide the information we were looking for at the time. But I'm just wondering, kind of as the new census comes out, as we're pushing through all these projects and we keep requesting more funding, the community is going to ask questions of, is it 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms that we need? What are the different needs on the island, or how could we create new policies, if it goes back to zoning, that could help relieve some of the affordable housing crisis. And so I think that might be something where we put out an RFP for, a data or survey study of our housing needs on the island.
Thank you, Kristie. Rima?
I think Brooke's idea of a work group is good. I think we probably should form a small group to go over this stuff. And the other thing is, in the MCD, isn't there an inclusionary component for housing? Maybe we could talk about that, tweaking that to have it be either employee or affordable or both, depending on how many units would be required. That's one area where we have an existing bylaw. So, but anyway, I think a work group probably would be good. And, sit down with Andrew probably would be a good place to start for that group. And so I'd say any volunteers, I think, let's kind of get that together and get it moving.
Go ahead, Brooke.
So following up on Kristie and Rima's, I had a couple of thoughts. I love the idea of a true needs assessment, which is different from the housing production plan. It's a different thing. And I think, my gut instinct tells me, and I say this all the time to people, yes and yes and yes. It's studios, it's 3 bedrooms, it's 30% AMI and it's 200% AMI. I mean, the need is so enormous and broad. We need, I mean, I can tell you it's everything, right? Just anecdotally, but how do we quantify that for the community? And then, and quantifying how housing is utilized on Nantucket. I think that data platform project proved how hard it is to actually nail down how people live here and how buildings are used in the housing space, because there's so many different varieties of how things get split up and utilized for housing. And then the other thought that came to mind is, you know, our mandate is affordable housing. That's in our name. But I think something that is really interesting to explore is the idea of market rate year-round restricted units, and how maybe zoning can be utilized to create a new sector of the market that is deed restricted to year-round occupancy, but with no affordability component, that's more financially viable for an inclusionary zoning bylaw, not requiring the deep subsidy, but getting more supply of housing that's available only to year-round occupancy as a sector of the market that we need to produce to hit the higher end of the lack of supply. So anyway, these are just random thoughts in my head.
Any other thoughts or reactions, Penny?
Yeah, one more, which is I'd like to, Kristie touched on sustainable income sources of funding. And I would like to focus again on the room occupancy tax. That had a majority vote, Article 38 did at annual town meeting. It failed to garner the 2/3 necessary to pass. I just think that it's the perfect vehicle to tie to affordable housing going forward.
I think there's a conversation that's a good vehicle and a good funding amount, but I will offer kudos to the finance department in the end for getting us to the table in a way that we got funded for this year. Is there another mechanism along those lines of contiguous regular funding, and working with them to get it so it wasn't tied to the account? That I agree. We need a regular reoccurring funding source that is predictable on an annual basis. And probably what's the easiest way to do that? Is it a percentage override item that we then have the ability to bond, maintains? Go ahead, Penny.
I was just going to say the easiest way to do it is get somebody else to pay for it. And Nantucket has a long history of approving such things.
Ken, you
Yeah, in a discussion with Representative Fernandez last week, there was also discussion that at some point in time, it would be, as we were looking seriously at an ongoing serious source of funding, again, depending on what happens with respect to the new management at the land bank, that looking at a warrant article that talks about a much smaller percentage of their income stream, either 5 or 10%, which in fact becomes a significant portion on an ongoing basis to us, is something that should be considered as being put forward again for consideration by the all of the voters. And I think that certainly the reaction that I've had in terms of when I've talked to people in the community, that is considered a reasonable percentage and something that wouldn't really attack the quote unquote mission of the land bank, but also address a second critical need in the community, which is in fact a regular ongoing source to help fund the creation of community if we want to be able to continue to survive with people working and living here in this community.
And I think things have become very apparent to the community that weren't necessarily such at town meeting in the sense of the shortage of employees and housing that we are now living in. I don't think as a community we were aware what they were at the beginning of June %. Ken, you bring up a good point on the meeting with Representative Fernandez the other day, and I think it's worth, while everyone's here, just touching base on some of the comments on the housing bank bill that he made. While his intent seems stalwart and fastidious and continuing to try and move things along, what I heard was the hill is steep and ever climbing, and while we may be 10 years into the process of the housing bank bill, it doesn't seem that there's light on the horizon at the moment, was kind of my takeaway from his comments.
Yeah, it was more a train coming than a shining light.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody had any other takeaways there, but while we continue to pursue it, it doesn't seem like it's going to be the source people in housing around the state are looking for. Brooke?
Yeah, and I would agree. I would say that while he's trying to remain optimistic, and there's a lot of work going on, and various groups are trying to chip away at the resistance to that. The resistance is really strong toward any new revenue sources. And to that point, and Kuszpa and I had talked about the possibility of going the land bank route by adding to the land bank fee and then allocating an additional portion to the housing trust. And I had the opportunity to talk to Rep. Fernandez about that, and he said that falls right squarely in the additional tax, that would encounter the same resistance as the housing bank bill. So that was disappointing, because I had about 6 hours of hope before it was dashed later that day. So
it's just so frustrating that, that money basically was earmarked for affordable housing. It goes into a fund that we have to beg for every year. It's beyond reasonable.
you're talking about the short-term rental tax?
Yeah, short-term rental. I mean, because we should have to beg every
The
year for funding.
The room occupancy tax. The room occupancy tax has existed for a long time. The definition was expanded 2 years ago to include short-term rentals, which of course now is generating the vast majority of that.
So I think what is key for this coming meeting is that we have to be in position. We have to connect all the dots for the people. I think last year's town meeting, like Brooke was saying, a lot of great efforts and ideas, but I think that we need to connect exactly where would this money be going. And I think the home ownership part of it is a huge component, because we're not, I think that we can manage safe harbor, which was sort of our first goal, with the monies that we've been getting over the last few years. But if we really want to provide opportunity for year-rounders to own a home here and maybe stem some of the homes going from year-rounders to investment or seasonal owners and keep them in the year-round family, regardless of income level, that we need that reliable ongoing source. And I think this past town meeting was kind of an icebreaker. And I think after this summer, we want to have all our ducks in a row and have another conversation next year.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, another thing that I would love to do is, I think we had a fair amount of communication success with the webinar we did with Fairwinds on the true cost of the housing crisis from a social emotional point of view, the impact on humanity, people's humanity. And I think that there is an opportunity now to have a similar conversation in the public space about the economic impact of our housing shortage, as evidenced this summer on the lack of ability to find employees. And obviously there's a structural labor issue going on nationwide that contributes to that this year. But the underlying piece of lack of housing has been there for this community. And it's being evidenced in the experience of our seasonal visitors, and levels of frustration I've never seen before in restaurants with wait staff who are not experienced, newly trained, young, and I've heard of a few examples of customers being extremely frustrated, staff being had things taken out on them while they're trying really hard, and ultimately there's an argument to be made. The brand that we have done such a massive job marketing internationally of Nantucket is at risk if we don't have people to do the work to make that Nantucket experience for our tourist economy happen. And I'd like to try to connect those dots for the community as well, before we go into next town meeting.
There's a lot of emotional aspect in that, but there's also a huge financial impact. Like there was one restaurant that was quoted having to close basically 28% of their active days by closing 2 days a week. And all of that meals tax loss revenue, income tax, like there is a huge loss into the community's revenue sources. So the problem exacerbates not just to an emotional aspect, but yeah, the spiral goes and goes, right? This is paying for our backing up source system and et cetera. Mr. Dicker, I'll come to you in a minute. Penny, as a board member.
Yeah, just quickly, part of what's causing the situation this year, in my opinion, is that the state came out of the COVID restrictions much faster than anticipated, which made it very difficult for business owners to plan with the hiring. That was definitely part of it. The other part is people are not going to Europe right now. They're traveling domestically. And that's created what one can only hope is sort of a post-pandemic bump in intense activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Mr. Dickler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, and then I wanted to float an idea for the trust. My questions were about the 15-point plan till the next town meeting. One question was, I'm not clear on what the actual steps that are required to establish a land trust are. In other words, does it require a vote at town meeting, et cetera, et cetera? And I didn't see anywhere the old fire station on the projected map. So I was wondering where that stood in terms of a time scale.
Great, thank you, Mr. Dickler. Tucker, I'm going to pass to you. I think.
Sure, I'll take the second one first. So the old fire station, I mean, we've known from the beginning that it's not immediately available to us, that it's going to house, at least temporarily, several town offices. That's been the town manager's plan. So it's, on the radar, but it's not in the next 2 or 3 or even 4 things that we're going to be able to look at. So, we're really focused on Orange Street, Vesper Lane, and then we do need a partner parcel for Vesper Lane. The old fire station site would, in and of itself, if it were developed for housing, create 24 or more units. So to go to the first part, all of these items, like much to you know, what Kristie had brought up earlier about funding. I mean, these are just sort of top line identifying the subject matter, and they all have an incredible amount of detail and work that is going to need to go into each of them. So with regard to a land trust, we know who to talk to. We've already talked to them about forming a land trust. We are going over to visit on the vineyard in a couple of weeks. Several folks on this Zoom here, the chair and vice chair, Ken and I are headed over with some of the land bank folks and others to look into further how the Island Housing Trust operates, as well as also how they collaborate with the land bank over there. And we'll be meeting with the head of their land bank, in addition to housing advocates on the island. So the short answers to your question are, do you need a vote at town meeting to establish a land trust? Depends whether you're doing it as private third-party organization or you're doing it municipally. And these are all questions that we need to sort out, but we're kind of putting out the moonshot of, you know, by town meeting next year, we want this in place. So we're going to be establishing, and this is where we're going to get into more detail on these at the July 20th meeting, but we wanted to, you know, discuss some of them preliminarily today. I think it would serve us well to establish a committee, much like the Neighborhood First Advisory Committee, which Mr. Dickler generously sat on. You know, that committee, that input guided us well in the deployment of the 25 million, in particular the Neighborhood First 20 million. And we think a committee of similar kind would be useful in looking at both the land trust in conjunction with the down payment assistance / shared equity aspect. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Dickler.
So the idea that I just wanted to throw out there is I got to thinking, stimulated by 97, rather than asking for money from the land bank, about asking for land from the land bank. And it's generally believed on the island that land bank land cannot be developed. And a careful reading of the Land Bank Act shows that not to be true. And I'm going to document that with a legal opinion at my own expense. But in brief, Section 6 prohibits development of land bank land, but it also includes exceptions. And an exception is obtained by a request to the Commissioner of the Environment. And one of the legitimate reasons for an exemption is a plan of a governmental body, such as the town of Nantucket. So it would be my contention that a request from the town to the land bank and put forward to the commissioner, given Governor Baker's strong support for affordable housing, would likely be approved. It's also my contention that the land bank, with nearly 4,000 acres, has a lot of parcels that are never going to be used for recreation, never going to be used for trails or golf courses or viewpoints or any of the other uses that the land bank is good at and that we're all grateful for. But there are ones that would work very well for affordable housing. And even small parcels, let's just take a 10-acre parcel, which nobody would ever miss from all the conservation land that we have. If that was developed with small houses, such as the Sachem's Path model, you're talking about a significant contribution to ownership possibilities on the island. So that's just a thought I'm thinking about, and we'll have more to say about when I do more research.
Thank you, Mr. Dickler. I appreciate that and the effort and your individual expense on the community's behalf. I truly do appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's important.
It is. On more of the items, go ahead, Tucker.
I had a question about one for the trust. So one of the items on the list, of course, is development at 135, 137 Orange Street. As we know, that was acquired certainly with an eye toward our safe harbor maintenance. The question really is, we just had the housing production plan certified for 1 year. It's likely we are going to seek an amendment in the next couple months to have that certification last for 2 years. That takes us to June of 2023. The question is around, when do we want to proceed with development at that site? If we want to have housing built as soon as possible, we can be developing the RFP to issue, let's say in August, and things will take the natural course. It would be likely that if we were moving things forward, let's say as quickly as we reasonably could to have the housing built, that it may not jibe with a safe harbor maintenance plan. And so it's very important for me to understand from the trust what your desires are with respect to that particular location.
So with that question, I'll open it up. Dave?
I mean, and you guys can yell at me if I'm wrong, but I think that the shy list maintenance is number one on the list, and other opportunities should be number 1.5. I mean, I don't want to say shy list, it takes dominance over everything, because there's so much need through the whole broad spectrum of affordable housing. But I think that we really need to be smart about the safe harbor. And if that property is part of our next safe harbor next year or the year after, we need to kind of keep it in our pocket and move forward towards other options, is my humble opinion.
Thanks, Dave. Kristie?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, with 6 Fairgrounds, if that would line up with 2023, and if so, could this property be used for home ownership, or can it only be rentals because it was the Neighborhood First funds?
Everything that is produced there must count on the SHI list because of the nature of the funds.
Okay.
So to that note, the subsidy would have to get really deep to be able to.
For ownership.
Got it. Brooke?
So really some of this will be informed by the revised census, because our ultimate end number may change. And so I don't know.
We're still gonna have a need to stay in safe harbor for a period.
Right.
Yeah.
No, agreed. But the timeline may shift a little, right? And depending on when Tacoma Green gets its financing and whether we have to subsidize further and the timing of that, we might pick up that 2023 year as the second year of their 64 units, right? If that happens next year and we get 2 years from there. So it's all, yeah.
So I would, like, if I had to guess, I mean, this is purely guess, but we're going to be in this 2-year period shortly here, and Tacoma Green may get a tax credit award either late this fall or next spring. So sometime in the next 12 months, they'll get a tax credit award. It more than likely, if we are in a position to fill that gap that we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
If, you know, when that happens, we're gonna somewhat automatically get a new 2-year period of safe harbor, which will cannibalize our current period. So, you know, we're really looking at late 2023 or summer 2024, like we should be in safe harbor until. So that's really the considerate, like we, in order for Orange Street to count for us on our SHI list, I would say that it is approximately a 6 to 12 month process. So that's like when we want to be thinking about landing the plane, in that 6 to 12 month window out.
So with this much time, do we have the opportunity to swing for the fences with a project like this? Like, do we have 2 opportunities to RFP it differently? Could we go for, you know, a deep, low AMI number with a really high tax subsidy? And if we, you know, spend 2 years trying to find somebody that doesn't work, we come back to the table with something more traditional that's easier to fund and create? Can we create 30% units or 60% units and look for you know, does the time afford us that opportunity?
Well, yes, you could do that, but I mean, as we've seen, especially because of the delay and you know, housing is the #1 like national issue, really, so that these tax credits are very competitive. So if we get a tax credit award on 6 Fairgrounds, you know, it's likely it'll be a few years before we would be eligible to get another one from the state. They've got to divvy these up across the Commonwealth.
Well, that's I guess that's kind of my point, right? Like
Yeah.
we have time to work towards that. I don't know. Ken?
Well, the thing I was thinking of, Sully, is 2 things. Number one, we have to be very, very careful because, in fact, this gives us at least a year of safe harbor. But if it's done at a point in time when 6 Fairgrounds is providing us 2 years, we don't get anything at all out of it because of the fact that we're going to lose the ability for this project to, in fact, help with the SHI list. The other point that I was talking to Tucker about is that in view of the fact that we maybe have 2 or 3 years before, in fact, we have to put this out to bid based on the timing of what we have now of 6 Fairgrounds, and when this would have to come on with a 6 to 12 month time frame to get it done. That's probably a time when we're going to see a shift in terms of downward shift in terms of the costs of doing this, because right now we're in a period of time when the cost of construction is way crazy, and at some point in time there's got to be some correction in the marketplace because we've had a 12 or 13 year run up driving everything up. So there's going to have to be some correction, and perhaps that gives us an opportunity to be able to say that the cost of doing the Orange Street property can in fact be reduced as a result of taking advantage of the timing.
Are there other comments, Rima?
I'm wondering if there is any advantage to maybe looking at that property for a specialized population, either elderly or disabled, and if there might be more grant opportunities for funding available if we went in that direction. You guys would know better than me, but that's something that's on my back burner all the time.
I think that's a tremendous idea and worth investigating. And maybe it couples with lower AMIs and deeper discount the credits. We have time to look at the best opportunities for this property, so. Brooke?
But fundamentally, we get back to the question I think Tucker asked us, which is, do we wait till 2024 to develop this property? Or do we create housing for people sooner? And that's the tension, right? Do we delay putting people into homes in order to protect this march toward 10% and remaining in safe harbor? And I really struggle. I really, in my heart, struggle with that that choice.
By Rima's comment, for me, it's an easy one. Move forward right away. Like, if we could find a specialized segment of the community that needs housing, I could keep looking. That's my personal opinion. Of looking for more projects down the road. If we can service a need that is that deep and important. Kristie?
Thank you. I struggle with that, Brooke. And I think if Six Fairgrounds is coming on soon, then that's providing housing and that gives us time to wait and see. I also, I wouldn't want to make a decision today as to what we would want to do. I think it's really important to see what the census is going to say and how close we are to that 10%. If Six Fairgrounds maybe miraculously gets us over that hump, then that's something that we wouldn't have to rush to stay, or we wouldn't have to wait to stay in safe harbor. We could actually produce the housing now. So I think it's worth kind of waiting a few months to see what those results are.
So,
Did I give you enough, Tucker? Go ahead.
yeah, so this is what I heard, and you guys tell me if it's different. I think we want to investigate in particular if there's specialized need that this site might lend itself well to addressing. It's not that we need the RFP at our next meeting, but we continue to discuss this, and then dependent on when some of these other puzzle pieces fall into place, we can be making a decision, let's say at that point, about when we move forward with this. If we are confident that, we're going to be in safe harbor all the way to where we need to be, then we may want to be pulling the trigger sooner. But we've got a little time. Am I hearing that correctly? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think we have a long list of work and priorities. So with that, move on to the next item on the agenda. I think we've covered that list pretty well. Back to that page. Other business, next meetings, plan to take place at the Community Room 4 Fairgrounds.
Yes, I think, again, that was a little bit of a holdover from our last, our June 15th meeting, but if the board agrees, I think we'll continue with Zoom meeting at least through September and then reevaluate.
We got multiple thumbs up and positive head shakes, so let's
excellent.
Continue with that. Public comment for items otherwise not on the agenda. Seeing none. Board comments. Kristie?
Thank you. I just received an email right before this meeting started that Habitat is going to be opening the lottery for Benjamin Drive in August. So Tucker, I don't know if you could send that around to the trust, but to help spread the message that those 3 units will be SHI eligible, which we're very excited for, and that the applications will open at the end of August or beginning of September. And it's awesome. 3 units.
And not only are they eligible, they are officially on our list. which is amazing. Yes, I will definitely circulate that. And thank you very much for bringing that up, Kristie.
Any other board comments? Seeing none, move to item 13. Look for a motion to move to executive session. Go ahead, Brooke, you're on mute.
So move to adjourn the open session to move to a closed executive session for the purpose of considering the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body and not to return to open meeting.
That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Penny by roll call. Brooke Mohr,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Kristie Ferrantella,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. We'll use the other link.
Where's the other
5
link?
minutes.
Aye, all.
Bye, thank you,
Bye, Howard.
Thank you,
5-minute
Howard.
break.
Yes.
Did we get the other link in an email?
Yes.
Mine just appeared on my calendar. I don't know how Tucker did that.
I can't, it was a separate invite. I can recirculate it right now.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.